So he lied about masks. He was well aware that COVID-19 may in fact have come from a lab in Wuhan, and he seemed more interested in getting his face on TV than finding solutions to the pandemic. Pretty much sums up what we've confirmed through Dr. Fauci's emails. Question is, will he ever be held accountable? And all the people that propped up this nonsense. Jack Posobiec is a senior editor at Human Events. You can pick up his latest book, The Antifa Stories from Inside the Black Bloc, on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. He joins us right now. Jack, it is quite a trove of information, this email dump. Fascinating to see how some media outlets act like, oh yeah, nothing to see here, don't worry. But when you actually read the emails, as I know you and I have both been doing the last 24 hours, you find out some interesting stuff. What's the biggest conclusion you're drawing so far from seeing these Fauci emails?
Well, two things, Buck, and thanks again for having me on. First of all, I love the spin that CNN and Washington Post and a few others are trying to put on this. It's not catching on, but they say, well, just look at how many emails he sent. Isn't he so nice responding to all these people, taking time out of his No, come on. We want to see what the actual emails had to say, all right? Treat us like we're adults, because we are. When you dig into this stuff, you're right. You do see the stuff where he's really opposing the idea of masks. You see the stuff where he says that the lockdowns or at least the school closures, are not necessary. But the biggest thing for me is that in the very early days, the earliest possible stages of this thing, he is discussing with his own assistants, people who work for him at the National Institute of Health, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. He's talking about gain of function. We've seen the emails. He himself is asking questions about the Institute and asking questions about whether or not gain of function experiments were being performed there in contravenance of that pause that was supposed to happen, or about this P3 framework of review that was supposed to go through. It turns out it wasn't something that was adhered to, even though they promised they were going to. All of this, seems to be water under the bridge, because he goes on TV and for almost a year and a half has said, don't worry about the Institute of Virology. I know it's right down the street, but don't worry about that. This is just natural, just natural. Internally, it was a completely different story. And then you can see him huddling with Tedros and others, trying to get not the facts straight about where this thing came from. No, they're trying to make sure they are on the same sheet of music when it comes to the public opinion, when it comes to their talking points, and when it comes to the political messaging of this entire thing. You know what I don't see in this email trove is any questions of him going back to Peter Daszak or going over to his colleagues in Wuhan and saying, hey, what the heck were you guys up to in the summer and winter of 2019? Was this thing coming out of your work?
You mentioned gain of function. We can put up on the screen for folks at home so they can see. Dated February 1st, 2020, from Dr. Fauci to Hugh Oceanclose of NIH. It is essential we speak this AM. Keep your cell phone on. But it says Nature Medicine SARS gain of function at the very top. SARS gain of function, folks. Read this paper as well as the email I'll forward to you now. And then the second part of this, the paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain of function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by the NIH. Not sure what this means, since Emily is sure that no coronavirus work went through the P3 framework. She'll try to determine if we have any distant ties to this work abroad. So they didn't know. I mean, this idea that the gain of function research, at best, Jack, we could say, at this phase in this email, he wasn't sure, but it was always a possibility that they were tinkering with a virus at this lab, and that's actually what got out of the lab.
What it says to me is that Fauci himself has questions about this, but it seems, though, that his concerns were not necessarily into the public health or the interests of providing information to the public as to where this thing possibly came from. It seems as though their interest is more in protecting their institutions, protecting their own positions, and making sure that they are not open to any vulnerabilities, because they, as they state, may have had ties to this work abroad, right? And the fact that it didn't go through the framework, we now know what that means. We know that they were conducting experiments, and it wasn't put through the review framework that they were supposed to set up, because we've had whistleblowers who were involved with this P3 system, which is essentially it's supposed to be this review board that everything goes through. Well, because they use the EcoHealth Alliance to do as a sort of a cutout for the funding, they can say, well, we didn't fund it. EcoHealth Alliance funded it. We just funded them. That same group, EcoHealth Alliance out of Houston, who are they headed by? Peter Daszak, the same Peter Daszak who's emailing Fauci early on saying, make sure you don't say anything about Wuhan, make sure you dispel all of these rumors and conspiracies about the Wuhan lab. And then also Peter Daszak, who a year later, we're told, is the guy who is put in charge of the, quote, independent investigation of the Wuhan lab by the WHO. The very same guy with his name all over this thing. Peter Daszak, someone that we really need to look into. And no, I'm sorry, you do not get to investigate yourself, Peter.